we're in SAV offices, as I said earlier on, beautiful offices here in Edinburgh, and on the lovely brass plate outside, we had SAV and we also had EnergiRaven. So we can talk about EnergiRaven now. What is that, first of all? And I'm as interested as everybody else, really. And what essentially is EnergiRaven? What's the concept of it?
EnergiRaven, it was first thought of as a energy monitoring platform. So we could monitor both heat networks and standalone buildings that wanted to monitor their energy use, to maximize their system efficiencies, see where they were losing energy, heat, water, electricity, gas, all can be monitored. That maybe we were a bit early in the UK, but certainly a lot of building owners and operators, it hasn't quite taken off as quickly as we had hoped. Certainly in Denmark, the equivalent of EnergiRaven is looking after local authorities, Carlsberg, Danske Bank, Copenhagen University, all these big, and all the building portfolios, and they then benchmark the operation, the energy efficiency, they do the ESG reporting, and so you can, if you're a university, for example, you can very easily see how each of your buildings are operating, and then you can tackle the worst offenders to help reduce your bill, and so we will get there.
Yeah,
we will eventually spend money on putting these monitoring systems in, but in the meantime, the idea was that EnergiRaven would be a platform to bring ideas to the industry, both to the public, to the heat network industry, and to politicians. Because I think the industry, our industry, the heat network industry, they know.
Yeah.
We talk in echo chambers most of the time. So now is the time we need to get that message out to other parties. And that will be end users, politicians, industry. The data center world are starting to prick up their ears on heat networks, because it's a greener operation for them if they could use the heat. And also, interestingly, if you don't need individual heat pumps in the local area, there's more electricity for the data center. So it's a very nice synergy between it. So the EnergiRaven was there we create these white papers, these discussion documents on a regular basis. We take adverts out in Private Eye, to hit the political world. We take adverts out in The Guardian, Scotsman, and various papers to try to get the message out there that we are throwing away heat and energy, a massive amount of heat and energy, and throwing away the potential of utilising wind electricity.
It's the scale, isn't it? The scale at which we're doing this. This is not 1 or 2 gigawatts here and there. This is absolutely reams and reams of heat that we're throwing away. So what is the next stage of EnergiRaven in terms of, you talk about the messaging and who needs to be involved. So how do we take that forward? How realistic is it that we can have those transmission lines that you've talked about in the past? And where are they over in Europe, and how can they be utilised here in the UK?
Well, a heat transmission line is from a utility point of view, it's a standard way to do it. Gas, high pressure gas, high voltage electricity, transmission lines. So a heat transmission line is you run large pipes from areas that have an abundance of waste, large industrial estates, where wind farms make shore or where the substations are onshore, and you have these energy centres that can create or capture heat at a very cheap price, and then you can transmit that long distances with large-scale pipe running at a decent temperature, so it's maybe 80, 90 degrees, and you then can feed localised heat networks or district heating with this heat source.
It's a tap-in sort of thing. Just
and they can tap in. So if we've been a little bit slow grasping the idea behind the heat transmission lines or heat highways, as we call them. But the more you look into, in particular, city centres and urban areas, the more you look into how to put a heat network, the demand is there, no problem. We all know where the demand is, but where's the supply coming from in the city centre? And it's just, land's expensive, it's scarce. You can't put these large energy centres with large thermal stores in city centres, so they've got to be outside, and you've got to bring it in. And so that's the idea. So you bring it where a heat network effectively is a vehicle to transfer energy from somewhere that is cheap to somewhere where it's needed. So it's a connection between a supply and demand. And that's the concept of heat hives. And once you get in that sort of scale, you've got revenue from customers coming in that they can then afford to pay for the large heat pipe, that can then take heat from 20, 30, 40, 50 miles.
And is the model, my naive question is, the model essentially the electricity model, in the sense of there's not many power stations in the middle of cities. So the power station is over there somewhere, and it brings those transmission lines in at a particular voltage, it gets stepped down, etc. Is that essentially the
100%.
model? So therefore, the entity that would run and operate those transmission lines would be who? Who would be that transmission owner?
We have a view on that. That should be local authority, not-for-profit, community owned, but I
government sponsored, or
I think we do need to get some. I think it needs to be a national utility. There's a high upfront cost of putting the pipes in, and I think classing national heat networks as national infrastructure, national supply infrastructure, I think is a necessity to do this right, and to get that scale. You can then have private heat network operators looking after various zones or whatever. But I do think that the not-for-profit angle, again, is coming from Denmark. 99.9% of Danish heat networks, of which cover 70% of the Danish homes and dwellings, are connected to heat networks. And 99.9% of those are not-for-profit.
Is that right?
So they're run kind of by the local authority, local community. You get elected onto the board, and you then have to have AGMs and discuss, we're going to upgrade the plant, do you think this is a good idea? This it's going to cost us this over 40 years, because it's patient capital for the capital cost, putting the pipes and expanding the network. But ultimately it'll reduce our heat price by a penny or something, and then they go and do that. My fear is, and I know I can see why, the UK is going down more the kind of private heat network route. It's easier. It's let somebody else take the risk on the capital cost and something. My fear is, how do you tackle the fuel poor areas?
Yes.
Because the return on your investment will be non-existent. So you've got a high density block of flats, all fuel poor, all got tiny little connections, very, very expensive, and they use hardly any heat.
Yes.
So what private company in the right mind is going to say, that's a great investment.
Yeah.
So it has to be some form of joint venture, golden share with a local authority, community owned, so there's lots of ways, but I think we have to keep fuel poverty in mind as one of the kind of reasons for putting heat networks in. And we've got to try to make sure any heat network proposals will prioritise fuel poor areas, as well as the hospitals and universities, schools.
In terms of that massive sort of scale transmission heat pipe, let's call it, then if I'm a heat network operator on a particular zone or a particular area, then I just take that heat essentially from that pipe and return my temperatures to it. I mean, it sounds to me like a very safe transmission line. In fact, there'll always be heat there. So I'm thinking in terms of, I can reduce my on-site backup plant, because we've been obsessed in this country with backup plant. We need N+1, this, that, the other. Well, that all costs money, and that all costs investment, and ultimately has an impact on resident prices. So that kind of scenario that I can rely on this, again, like the electricity network, you know, you don't have backup most people don't have a generator in the back garden, do they? Yeah. Or, and so on. So it's not rocket science, this. It seems as though it's been done before, to me, as a model. It's making sure that we now understand it in heat terms, and getting that message across to those who need to hear it. And how can it solve that problem that you've just mentioned there about fuel poverty? Yeah. And if we can solve that problem, if any government can say, I can solve fuel poverty, that is a great message, really. Yeah.